Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon and watched the stars drift past through the main viewing screen. The ship had been traveling through space for 3 weeks now, exploring new systems that no human had ever seen before. Earth was far behind them, just a tiny blue dot in their memory banks and navigation computers. Jake was a tall man with brown hair and steady green eyes. He had been commanding exploration ships for 12 years, but this mission felt different. They were farther from home than any human crew had ever gone before. The ship carried a crew of 150 people, all volunteers who knew they might not see Earth again for many months. Lieutenant Lisa Carter sat at the communications station, her fingers dancing over the control panels as she monitored radio signals from nearby space. She was young, maybe 28 years old, with short blonde hair and bright blue eyes that never seemed to miss anything important. Lisa had joined the crew because she wanted to be the first person to talk to alien life if they ever found any. The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of the ship's engines and the occasional beep from the instrument panels. Commander Alex Rodriguez worked at the tactical station, keeping track of the ship's weapons and defensive systems. Alex was a serious man who always prepared for the worst possible situation, even during peaceful exploration missions. Suddenly, Lisa's station erupted with noise and flashing lights. She quickly adjusted her headset and began typing commands into her computer. Her face went pale as she read the information appearing on her screens. "Captain, I'm picking up multiple contacts on long-range sensors," Lisa announced, her voice steady despite the surprise. "They're big, sir, much bigger than our ship." Jake walked over to her station and looked at the data scrolling across the monitors. The computer was showing at least 6 large objects moving toward them at incredible speed. Each one was easily 3 times the size of the New Horizon, and they were closing the distance fast. "How long until they reach us?" Jake asked, already knowing he might not like the answer. "At their current speed, maybe 20 minutes, Lisa replied, her fingers still working frantically at the controls. "Captain, these ships are using technology I've never seen before. Their engines are producing energy signatures that our computers can't identify." Alex looked up from his tactical display with a worried expression. "Sir, those ships are heavily armed. I'm reading weapons systems that could destroy us without much effort. Whatever these things are, they're not here to say hello and welcome us to the neighborhood." Jake nodded and walked back to his command chair. He had always known this. Day might come. Humanity had been exploring space for 50 years, but they had never encountered intelligent alien life. Now it seemed like that was about to change, and the aliens were coming to them instead of the other way around. "All hands. This is the captain," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "We have incoming contacts of unknown origin. All crew members should report to stations immediately. This is not a drill." The bridge became busy as more crew members arrived at their posts. The ship's chief engineer, a woman named Carol White, appeared on the main screen from the engine room. Her face was covered with sweat and oil from working on the ship's power systems. "Captain, we're running at maximum efficiency down here," Carol reported. "If you need more power for weapons or shields, I can give you everything we've got. Just say the word." Jake appreciated his crew's readiness, but he hoped they wouldn't need to fight. Maybe these aliens just wanted to talk. Maybe they were curious about humans just like humans were curious about them. But Alex's tactical readings suggested otherwise. "Lisa, open all communication channels," Jake ordered. "Let's try to make contact before they get here." Lisa worked at her station for several minutes, sending signals on every frequency the ship could broadcast. She tried mathematics, simple pictures, and even music, hoping something would get through to the approaching ships. The aliens remained silent. "No response, Captain," Lisa finally reported. "They're not answering any of our signals." The alien ships appeared on the main viewing screen as small dots of light that grew larger every second. As they came closer, the crew could see that these vessels looked nothing like human ships. They were long and sleek, with curved hulls that seemed to shimmer in the starlight. Strange energy patterns flowed along their surfaces like living lightning. "Those ships are beautiful," someone whispered from the back of the bridge. "They're also pointing weapons at us," Alex added grimly. One of the alien ships moved ahead of the others and stopped directly in front of the New Horizon. It was massive, easily 4 times the length of the human vessel. Strange symbols glowed along its hull, and weapon ports opened like hungry mouths. Suddenly, Lisa's communication equipment came alive with an incoming transmission. The main screen flickered and changed to show the interior of the alien ship's bridge. The crew of the New Horizon found themselves looking at their first extraterrestrial being. Admiral Zex Thera was reptilian, with green scales covering his face and neck. His eyes were large and yellow, with vertical pupils that made him look like a dangerous predator. He wore what appeared to be a military uniform covered with decorations and symbols of rank. "Primitive vessel," Zex Thera spoke in perfect English, though his voice was cold and threatening. "You have entered sacred Imperial space without permission. This is a violation of laws that have existed for 3,000 years. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded." Jake stood up from his command chair and faced the alien admiral. Despite the threat, he tried to remain calm and diplomatic. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship New Horizon. We come in peace and had no knowledge of your territorial boundaries. We request permission to establish diplomatic relations with your government." Zex Thera's eyes narrowed to thin slits. Several other aliens appeared behind him on the screen, all wearing military uniforms and looking very unfriendly. "Diplomatic relations? You dare to speak of diplomacy? Your species is unknown to the Empire. You have no right to demand anything from your superiors." "We're not demanding anything," Jake replied patiently. "We're asking for the chance to talk peacefully and avoid any misunderstanding between our peoples." The alien admiral made a sound that might have been laughter, but it sounded more like a snake hissing. "There is no misunderstanding, human. You will surrender your ship and crew immediately, or we will take them by force. The Empire does not negotiate with primitive species who violate our space." Jake looked around at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. Lisa had her hand on the communication controls, ready to cut the transmission if necessary. Alex was standing by the weapons console, though Jake knew their small ship couldn't fight 6 alien warships. "Admiral," Jake said carefully, "we cannot surrender our ship and crew. We are peaceful explorers, not invaders. Surely there's a way to resolve the situation without violence." Zex Thera's face twisted into what looked like a cruel smile. "Your compliance is not required, human. We will take what we want regardless of your protests." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge of the New Horizon in tense silence. Jake could see the alien ships moving into attack formation around them, their weapons charging with deadly energy. "Captain," Alex called out, "they're targeting our engines and life support systems. They want to disable us, not destroy us." Jake made his decision. "All hands battle stations. Lisa, send a message to Earth immediately. Tell them what we found out here and what's happening to us." The aliens opened fire. Dr. Elena Brooks sat in the captain's chair of the Silent Runner and watched the stars through the main viewing screen. The ship was invisible to most sensors thanks to its advanced stealth technology, floating quietly in the empty space between 2 Imperial star systems. Elena was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp brown eyes that missed nothing important. She had spent 20 years studying alien cultures that humans had never met, preparing for this exact moment. Captain Ryan Davis stood beside her chair, reviewing the mission plans on his portable computer. Ryan was a quiet man who specialized in dangerous intelligence missions. His job was to get Elena's team close enough to Imperial space to gather information about the enemy without being detected. The Silent Runner was perfect for this kind of work because it could hide from alien sensors while recording everything they needed to know. 3 weeks had passed since Captain Jake Morrison's ship had been attacked by the Imperial fleet. The New Horizon had somehow escaped from the alien warships, but the encounter had changed everything for humanity. Earth's government now knew they were not alone in the galaxy, and their new neighbors were hostile and dangerous. Elena's mission was simple but extremely risky. She needed to learn everything possible about the Galactic Empire before they launched a full attack on Earth. How many ships did they have? What kind of weapons did they use? How was their government organized? Most importantly, did they have any weaknesses that humanity could exploit? The Silent Runner carried a crew of only 30 people, all specialists in intelligence gathering and stealth operations. They had been traveling through Imperial space for 2 weeks, staying hidden while they recorded alien communications and observed Imperial military activities. So far, they had learned disturbing information about humanity's new enemies. Lieutenant Amy Watson worked at the communications station, listening to alien radio transmissions and trying to decode their military signals. Amy was young but brilliant with languages and codes. She had already figured out how to understand basic Imperial communications, which gave Elena's team access to enemy military reports and government messages. "Dr. Brooks," Amy called out softly. "I'm receiving another transmission from the Imperial High Council. They're discussing the human contact incident again." Elena walked over to Amy's station and put on a headset to listen to the alien voices. Even through the translation computer, she could hear the anger and confusion in their words. The Imperial leaders were arguing about what to do with humanity, and their discussion revealed important information about how their government worked. The Empire was ruled by a council of representatives from 12 different alien species. Each species controlled hundreds of star systems and billions of people. They had been the dominant power in this part of the galaxy for over 3,000 years, and they were not used to being challenged by anyone. What worried Elena most was the size of the Imperial military. According to the intercepted communications, they had over 10,000 warships scattered across their territory. Each ship was larger and more heavily armed than anything humanity could build. If the Empire decided to attack Earth with their full strength, the human race would be wiped out completely. Captain Davis joined Elena at the communications station and listened to the alien voices through his own headset. His face became grim as he heard the Imperial leaders discussing humanity, like they were talking about dangerous insects that needed to be exterminated. "They're scared," Elena said quietly, surprising Ryan with her observation. "Scared?" Ryan asked. "Doctor, they have 10,000 warships. We have maybe 50 ships that could fight in space combat. How could they possibly be scared of us?" Elena pointed to the translation text scrolling across Amy's computer screen. "Listen to how they're talking about Captain Morrison's escape. According to their reports, the New Horizon shouldn't have been able to survive their attack, but it did. Not only did it survive, it actually damaged 3 of their ships before escaping." Ryan read the translated text more carefully and began to understand what Elena meant. The Imperial reports described human technology as impossible and beyond current understanding. The aliens couldn't figure out how a single human ship had survived an attack from 6 Imperial warships. Meanwhile, in the capital city of the Galactic Empire, Counselor Vex Mirren was conducting his own investigation into the human problem. Vex Mirren belonged to an insect-like species with 4 arms and large compound eyes that could see things other aliens missed. He was the Empire's chief intelligence officer, responsible for gathering information about potential threats to Imperial security. Vex Mirren stood in his private office, studying holographic displays that showed everything the Empire knew about humanity. The information was disturbing because there was so little of it. Humans appeared to be a young species that had only been traveling in space for about 50 years. They controlled only 1 star system and had a population of less than 10 billion people. According to every computer model and expert analysis, humans should have been helpless against Imperial technology. Their ships should have been destroyed instantly by Imperial weapons. Their primitive society should have surrendered immediately when faced with the Empire's superior power. Instead, they had fought back and escaped, leaving Imperial military commanders confused and angry. The most troubling part of Vex Mirren's investigation was the analysis of human technology recovered from the battle site. Imperial scientists had found pieces of the human ship's hull and weapon systems floating in space after the fight. When they studied these fragments, they discovered materials and energy patterns that shouldn't exist. Human defensive shields operated on principles that Imperial science didn't understand. Their weapons fired projectiles that could penetrate Imperial armor with frightening efficiency. Most shocking of all, their engines produced more power than should be possible from such a small ship. Vex Mirren buzzed his wings nervously as he reviewed the technical reports. In 3,000 years of imperial dominance, they had never encountered a species with technology that surpassed their own. The Empire's power was based on their technological superiority over younger species. If humans actually possessed better technology, the entire foundation of imperial rule could be threatened. Back on the Silent Runner, Elena's team continued gathering intelligence about imperial society and military organization. They discovered that the Empire's member species were not all happy with imperial rule. Many worlds paid heavy taxes to support the imperial military and received little in return. Some species had been conquered centuries ago and still resented their alien rulers. Elena realized that the Empire's greatest weakness might not be military, but political. If humanity could convince some imperial member species to rebel against their rulers, the Empire's numerical advantage would be reduced significantly. A civil war within the Empire would give humanity time to build better defenses and possibly find allies among the alien species. Dr. Elena Brooks made careful notes about everything her team was learning. The Empire was powerful, but not invincible. They were afraid of human technology and confused by human tactics. Most importantly, their own people were not completely loyal to the imperial government. Amy Watson intercepted another transmission from the Imperial High Council. This time, the alien leaders were discussing military preparations for a large-scale attack on human space. They were planning to send a fleet of over 100 warships to destroy Earth's defenses and capture human technology for study. Elena knew it was time to return home with this critical information. Earth's military leaders needed to know what they were facing and how much time they had to prepare. The Silent Runner turned toward human space, carrying intelligence that would determine the fate of humanity in the coming war. As the stealth ship disappeared into hyperspace, Counselor Vexmiran was presenting his findings to the Imperial High Council. His report warned that humans might be more dangerous than they appeared, but most council members dismissed his concerns as unnecessary worry. They believed that imperial superiority was absolute, and that no primitive species could threaten their ancient empire. The stage was set for a conflict that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Admiral Patricia Williams stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Guardian and watched 40 Imperial warships approaching through the darkness of space. The alien fleet was heading directly toward New Geneva, humanity's newest colony world, and Patricia knew this was no accident. The Empire had chosen this target carefully to test human resolve and military capabilities. Patricia was a veteran commander with 20 years of experience in space combat, but she had never faced odds like these before. Her defensive fleet consisted of only 12 human warships against 40 Imperial vessels, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything Earth had ever built. The smart tactical decision would be to retreat and save her ships for a better fight, but Patricia couldn't abandon the 3 million colonists living on New Geneva. Lieutenant Karen Miller sat in the cockpit of her fighter craft, waiting for the order to launch from the Guardian's flight deck. Karen was one of Earth's best pilots, with reflexes fast enough to handle the new generation of human fighters that could outmaneuver anything the Empire had ever seen. Her squadron consisted of 24 pilots who had trained together for years, learning to fight as a coordinated unit against superior numbers. The Imperial fleet was commanded by Supreme Admiral Korthval, a member of the crystalline species that had joined the Empire 800 years ago. Korthval's body was made of living crystal that could withstand enormous physical damage, and his mind could process tactical information faster than most organic brains. He had never lost a battle in 3 centuries of military service, and he expected this fight against primitive humans to be a simple demonstration of Imperial superiority. Korthval stood in the command center of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, and studied the human defensive formation. The 12 human ships were positioned between his fleet and the planet, but their arrangement made no sense according to standard Imperial military doctrine. Instead of forming a solid defensive line, the human ships were scattered across a wide area of space with large gaps between individual vessels. "Supreme Admiral," reported his tactical officer, "the human ships are not responding to our demands for surrender. They appear to be preparing for combat despite being vastly outnumbered." Korthval's crystal body pulsed with colors that indicated amusement. These humans are either very brave or very stupid. No matter. We will crush them quickly and then proceed with the occupation of their colony world. All ships, begin the attack. The Imperial fleet opened fire with energy weapons that could melt through solid steel in seconds. Brilliant beams of destructive force lanced across space toward the human ships, but something unexpected happened. Instead of being destroyed by the overwhelming firepower, the human vessels seemed to dance between the energy beams like leaves blown by the wind. Admiral Patricia Williams smiled grimly as she watched her ships execute the combat maneuvers they had practiced for months. Human defensive technology was based on mobility rather than heavy armor, allowing their ships to move faster and change direction more quickly than the massive Imperial warships. The scattered formation that confused Korthval was actually a carefully planned tactic that maximized their speed advantage. All ships, execute attack pattern Delta, Patricia ordered over the communication system. Fighter squadrons, you are cleared for launch. Lieutenant Karen Miller felt her fighter craft catapult from the Guardian's launch bay and immediately accelerated toward the Imperial fleet. 23 other fighters launched simultaneously from the human ships, forming a swarm of small, fast attack craft that could strike targets and escape before the enemy could respond effectively. Karen's fighter was equipped with new weapons, technology that Earth scientists had developed specifically for fighting larger alien ships. Instead of trying to match the Empire's massive energy weapons, human engineers had created precision missiles that could penetrate enemy shields and target critical systems. One fighter carrying 12 missiles could potentially disable a ship, 10 times its size if the pilot was skilled enough to hit the right targets. The Imperial fleet tried to track the human fighters with their defensive weapons, but the small craft were too fast and maneuverable. Korthval watched in growing frustration as his gunners missed target after target, while the human fighters darted between his ships like angry insects. "This is impossible," muttered the Imperial tactical officer. "How can primitive ships move so quickly? Our sensors can barely track them." Korthval's crystal body began pulsing with colors that indicated anger and confusion. In 3 centuries of combat, he had never seen anything like the human fighting style. Imperial doctrine was based on the assumption that bigger ships with more powerful weapons would always defeat smaller vessels, but the humans were proving that assumption wrong. Karen Miller lined up her fighter for an attack run on one of the Imperial cruisers. She fired 6 missiles at the enemy ship's engine section and immediately turned away to avoid the return fire. The missiles struck their target with pinpoint accuracy, causing explosions that crippled the cruiser's propulsion system and left it drifting helplessly in space. All around the battle area, human fighters were having similar success against the Imperial ships. The aliens' massive vessels were designed to fight other large warships, not swarms of small, fast attackers. Their weapons were too slow to track fighters effectively, and their defensive systems couldn't handle multiple simultaneous attacks from different directions. Admiral Patricia Williams coordinated the overall battle from the Guardian's bridge, using the mobility of her ships to maximum advantage. While the fighters attacked enemy vessels, her larger ships used hit-and-run tactics to strike Imperial ships and then retreat before they could be targeted effectively. The human ships would appear from unexpected directions, fire their weapons, and disappear again before the enemy could respond. The turning point of the battle came when Sergeant Danny Collins led a boarding action against Korthval's flagship. Danny was a Marine Corps veteran who specialized in close-quarters combat in zero-gravity environments. His assault team used small, fast transport ships to approach the Eternal Glory, while it was distracted by fighter attacks. Human Marines wore powered armor that gave them enhanced strength and protection, while allowing them to move quickly through the corridors of enemy ships. Danny's team cut through the hull of the Imperial flagship and fought their way toward the command center, engaging alien security forces in brutal hand-to-hand combat. The Imperial crew had never faced anything like human Marines in close-quarters battle. Humans fought with a ferocity and adaptability that shocked the aliens, who were used to more formal, ritualized combat. Danny's team moved through the ship like a force of nature, adapting their tactics to each new situation and overcoming obstacles that should have stopped them. Supreme Admiral Korthval found himself facing human invaders on his own bridge, while his fleet was being systematically destroyed by fighter attacks and hit-and-run strikes. For the first time in his long military career, he was experiencing defeat at the hands of a supposedly primitive enemy. "Retreat," Korthval ordered, his crystal body pulsing with colors of humiliation and rage. "All ships that can still move, retreat immediately." Only 14 Imperial ships survived the battle at New Geneva. The rest had been destroyed or disabled by human forces that should have been easily defeated. As the Imperial survivors limped back toward their own territory, they carried with them the shocking news that the Empire's military superiority was not absolute. Admiral Patricia Williams watched the alien ships disappear into hyperspace and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Humanity had won its first major victory against the Galactic Empire, proving that superior technology and tactics could overcome numerical disadvantage. But she knew this was just the beginning of a much larger conflict that would determine the future of human civilization. President Helen Foster stood in the war room deep beneath the Earth Defense Headquarters and stared at the holographic display showing 2,000 Imperial warships moving toward human space. The red dots representing enemy vessels covered the three-dimensional star map like a deadly swarm of locusts heading toward everything humanity had built over the past 50 years. Helen was a strong woman who had led Earth through many difficult times, but she had never faced anything like this before. The Empire's response to their defeat at New Geneva was overwhelming and terrifying. Emperor Zarthul the Eternal had emerged from his palace for the first time in centuries to personally command the largest military force in galactic history. Dr. Amy Johnson worked frantically in her laboratory, putting the finishing touches on humanity's most advanced technology project. Amy was a brilliant scientist who had spent the last 5 years developing quantum displacement systems that could make human ships appear and disappear almost instantly. Her breakthrough technology might be the only thing that could save Earth from complete destruction. The quantum displacement system worked by folding space around a ship, allowing it to jump from one location to another without traveling through the space in between. Unlike normal faster-than-light travel, quantum displacement was instantaneous and left no energy signature that enemy sensors could detect. A ship using Amy's technology could appear behind enemy lines, attack critical targets, and vanish before the enemy knew what hit them. Commander Scott Taylor stood beside Amy in the laboratory, reviewing the technical specifications for the new displacement drives. Scott was a special operations officer who specialized in deep strike missions behind enemy lines. His job was to use Amy's technology to hit Imperial supply lines and communication networks, creating confusion and panic within the enemy fleet. "How many ships can we equip with the displacement drives?" Scott asked, studying the complex diagrams on Amy's computer screens. "We have enough components for 12 ships, Amy replied, wiping sweat from her forehead. "I know it's not many compared to what the Empire is bringing against us, but these 12 ships should be able to cause damage far beyond their numbers." Scott nodded and began planning his missions. 12 ships equipped with quantum displacement technology could strike targets across the entire Imperial fleet simultaneously. If his teams could destroy the right supply ships and communication relays, they might be able to disrupt the Empire's coordination and create opportunities for Earth's main defensive fleet. Meanwhile, in the throne room of the Imperial Palace, Emperor Zarthul the Eternal prepared for his first personal military campaign in over 300 years. Zarthul was an ancient being whose exact age was unknown even to his closest advisors. His body had been enhanced with technology that kept him alive far beyond the natural lifespan of his species, and his mind contained the military knowledge of 3 millennia. The Emperor's appearance was both magnificent and terrifying. His tall, thin frame was covered in robes that seemed to be made of liquid starlight, and his face was hidden behind a mask of polished metal that reflected the viewer's own image back at them. When he spoke, his voice echoed with the authority of absolute power that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. "This human infestation ends now," Zarthul declared to his assembled military commanders. "I will not allow a primitive species to challenge the natural order that has brought peace and stability to countless worlds. The humans will be destroyed completely, and their worlds will serve as an example to any other species that dares to defy Imperial authority." The Emperor's fleet consisted of ships from all 12 member species of the Empire. Massive battleships that could destroy entire cities with a single shot. Fast cruisers designed to hunt down fleeing enemies and carrier vessels loaded with thousands of fighter craft. No military force in galactic history had ever assembled such overwhelming firepower in one place. Back on Earth, Commander Scott Taylor launched the first quantum displacement mission against Imperial supply lines. His ship, the Shadow Strike, appeared suddenly in the middle of an Imperial convoy carrying fuel and ammunition to the main attack fleet. Before the surprised alien crews could react, Scott's team destroyed 6 supply ships and disappeared again into quantum space. The attack created exactly the kind of confusion Scott had hoped for. Imperial commanders couldn't understand how a human ship had appeared in the middle of their supposedly secure supply route. Their sensors showed no sign of the attackers arriving or departing, which made the assault seem like magic rather than military technology. Similar attacks began happening all across the Imperial fleet's extended formation. Human ships would appear without warning, strike critical targets, and vanish before the enemy could mount any effective defense. Communication relays were destroyed, cutting off contact between different parts of the Imperial fleet. Supply convoys were attacked and scattered, leaving frontline ships without fuel and ammunition. Dr. Amy Johnson monitored the displacement missions from her laboratory and smiled with satisfaction as the reports came in. Her quantum technology was working perfectly, allowing small human forces to strike targets that should have been impossible to reach. The Empire's numerical advantage was being undermined by their inability to predict or prevent the human attacks. Emperor Zarthul grew increasingly frustrated as reports of human raids reached his flagship. His massive fleet was supposed to be invincible, but somehow the humans were striking at will throughout his formation. The attacks were not causing massive casualties, but they were creating fear and uncertainty among his crews. "How are they doing this?" the Emperor demanded of his science advisors. "Our sensors show nothing. Our defenses detect no approaching threats. Yet somehow these humans are appearing in our midst like ghosts." The Imperial scientists had no answers. Human quantum displacement technology was completely beyond their understanding, based on principles of physics that the Empire had never discovered. To the aliens, it seemed like the humans possessed supernatural powers that allowed them to ignore the normal laws of space and time. President Helen Foster received regular updates on the displacement missions and felt a growing sense of hope. The psychological warfare was working even better than the physical damage. Intercepted Imperial communications showed that many alien crews were becoming nervous and demoralized by the constant threat of surprise attacks. Some Imperial member species began questioning whether they wanted to be part of this war against humanity. The humans had demonstrated military capabilities that seemed impossible according to Imperial science, and many aliens wondered if their own government had told them the truth about human primitiveness. Commander Scott Taylor led another displacement raid, this time targeting the Imperial fleet's main communication hub. His team destroyed the massive relay station that coordinated information between different parts of the enemy force, leaving thousands of Imperial ships unable to communicate with their commanders. The loss of communication created chaos throughout the Imperial fleet. Ship captains who had relied on central coordination for centuries suddenly found themselves making independent decisions without guidance from higher authority. Some continued advancing toward Earth, while others slowed down or changed course, creating gaps and confusion in what had been a perfectly organized formation. Emperor Zarthul realized that his traditional approach to warfare was failing against these unpredictable humans. The Empire's strength had always been based on overwhelming force applied in a coordinated manner, but the humans were using unknown technology to disrupt that coordination. For the first time in his long reign, the Emperor began to doubt whether Imperial victory was certain. As the Imperial fleet drew closer to Earth, the stage was set for a final confrontation that would determine whether humanity survived or became another footnote in the Empire's long history of conquest. Fleet Admiral Kevin Park stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Defiance and watched the massive Imperial fleet emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the Nexus system. The sight was both terrifying and magnificent as nearly 2,000 alien warships appeared in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with weapon systems that could reduce planets to cosmic dust. Kevin was humanity's most experienced fleet commander, a man who had risen through the ranks during Earth's expansion into space. He had never commanded more than 50 ships in a single battle, but today he led humanity's entire space fleet against the largest military force in galactic history. The odds were impossible, but Kevin had learned that humans specialized in doing impossible things. Captain Tony Martinez piloted the flagship Earth's Pride through the complex defensive formation that Kevin had arranged around the Nexus system. Tony's ship was equipped with Dr. Amy Johnson's most advanced quantum displacement technology, allowing it to phase through enemy shields and deliver devastating attacks at point-blank range. The Earth's Pride represented everything humanity had learned about space combat during their brief but violent introduction to galactic warfare. Emperor Zarthul, the Eternal, stood in the command center of his personal warship, the Eternal Dominion, and surveyed the human defensive fleet through his ship's powerful sensors. The human force was pitifully small compared to his overwhelming armada, but the Emperor had learned not to underestimate these strange creatures who seemed to defy every rule of civilized warfare. The Imperial fleet had suffered constant harassment during their journey to the Nexus system. Human raiders using quantum displacement technology had struck supply convoys, communication stations, and isolated warships throughout the long voyage. The psychological effect of these attacks had been devastating, leaving many Imperial crews nervous and demoralized before the main battle even began. General Lisa Wright commanded the ground defense forces on the 3 inhabited planets in the Nexus system. Lisa was a veteran of many planetary campaigns, but she had never faced an enemy with the Empire's overwhelming firepower advantage. Her strategy relied on mobility, superior individual training, and the human ability to adapt quickly to changing battlefield conditions. The battle began when Emperor Zarthul ordered his entire fleet to advance in a massive wave that should have swept away human resistance in minutes. Instead, the human ships scattered like leaves in a hurricane, using their superior speed and maneuverability to avoid the crushing weight of Imperial firepower while striking back with precision attacks against critical targets. Captain Tony Martinez engaged the quantum displacement system and watched reality blur around the Earth's Pride as the ship phased through space-time. The flagship appeared inside the Imperial formation, directly behind the Eternal Dominion's defensive shields. Before the surprised alien crew could react, Tony's weapons fired at point-blank range, causing massive explosions that crippled the Emperor's command ship. The psychological impact of seeing their Emperor's vessel damaged by a human attack rippled through the Imperial fleet like a shockwave. For 3,000 years, no enemy had ever successfully struck the Imperial flagship. The sight of the Eternal Dominion trailing smoke and debris shattered the confidence of many alien crews who had believed their victory was certain. Fleet Admiral Kevin Park coordinated the human response from his position in the center of the defensive formation. His ships fought like a pack of wolves against a herd of giants, using speed and coordination to attack weak points while avoiding direct confrontation. With superior firepower, human captains had trained for years to fight as a unified force, making split-second decisions that confused and frustrated their alien opponents. Ambassador Grace Thompson had arrived in the Nexus system aboard a diplomatic vessel, just as the battle began. Grace was humanity's most skilled negotiator, a woman who understood that wars could be won with words as effectively as with weapons. She had been monitoring Imperial communications throughout the conflict, waiting for the right moment to offer the Empire's member species an alternative to continued warfare. As the battle raged around them, General Lisa Wright's ground forces demonstrated human superiority in planetary combat. When Imperial troops landed on the inhabited worlds, they found themselves facing an enemy that fought with a combination of advanced technology and primitive cunning that their military doctrine couldn't handle. Human soldiers used guerrilla tactics, combined arms coordination, and individual initiative that overwhelmed the Empire's rigid command structure. The turning point came when several Imperial ships began broadcasting surrender signals. The crews of these vessels had watched their supposedly invincible fleet being systematically outfought by a force 1/10 their size, and they could no longer believe in Imperial superiority. The defections started slowly, but gathered momentum, as more and more alien crews realized they were fighting for a lost cause. Ambassador Grace Thompson seized the moment to broadcast her message to the entire Imperial fleet. Her transmission reached thousands of alien vessels simultaneously, offering their crews and their homeworlds a chance to join humanity in building a new galactic order based on cooperation rather than domination. "People of the galaxy," Grace announced, her voice carrying across space to reach every Imperial ship. "You have seen today that the Empire's claim of invincibility is a lie. Your rulers have told you that humans are primitive and weak, but we have proven that courage and innovation can defeat tyranny and oppression. We offer you a choice. Continue serving masters who can no longer protect you, or join us in creating a future where all species can live in freedom and dignity." The response was immediate and dramatic. Entire squadrons of Imperial ships began switching sides, turning their weapons against their former commanders and declaring allegiance to humanity's vision of galactic liberation. The Empire's member species had endured centuries of oppressive rule, and they seized this opportunity to break free from their alien overlords. Emperor Zarthul watched his empire crumbling around him as more and more ships defected to the human cause. The ancient ruler who had dominated the galaxy for millennia found himself commanding a shrinking force of loyalist vessels, while his former subjects celebrated their newfound freedom. In desperation, he ordered his remaining ships to ram the human fleet in a final suicidal attack. The Emperor's flagship, the Eternal Dominion, led the charge toward the Earth's pride, but the attack was stopped by the very Imperial officers who served aboard Zarthul's own ship. His bridge crew, representing multiple alien species, refused to follow their ruler's mad order and instead arrested the Emperor for crimes against the people of the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Kevin Park watched the last Imperial resistance collapse as Emperor Zarthul was taken into custody by his own officers. The battle was over, but more importantly, the war had ended not through human conquest, but through the liberation of the Empire's oppressed peoples. 5 years later, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration ship New Dawn and watched the stars through the main viewing screen. The man whose first contact with aliens had started this conflict now served as Admiral of Exploration for the Galactic Confederation, leading joint human-alien crews to discover new worlds beyond the borders of the former empire. The galaxy had learned that size and age didn't guarantee superiority. Sometimes it took a young, ambitious species to show everyone else what was truly possible when courage met innovation. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy. They had liberated it, creating a new order where cooperation replaced domination and freedom triumphed over tyranny. The former Imperial worlds now governed themselves as independent members of the Confederation, with Earth serving as a coordinating capital rather than a ruling power. The galaxy was free, and the future belonged to all species working together toward common goals of exploration, discovery, and mutual prosperity.